The Voyage of the Titanic, a comprehensive account. The Titanic, formerly known as the RMS Titanic, was a British passenger liner that infamously sank on its maiden voyage in April 1912. This maritime disaster has become one of the most analyzed and poignant tales in history, embodying the era's ambition, extravagance, and tragic human cost. Construction of the Titanic, shipyard, and design. The Titanic was built by Harland and Wolff, one of the largest and most renowned shipbuilding companies of the time, located in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Founded in 1861, the shipyard was a major player in maritime engineering. Construction began on March 31, 1910. J. Bruce Ismay, managing director of the White Star Line, and chief designer Thomas Andrews oversaw the project. Construction process. The Titanic was constructed in sections assembled in the shipyard. Thousands of workers, including skilled craftsmen and laborers, were involved in the meticulous building process. The ship was launched on May 31, 1911, amid a grand ceremony attended by thousands. After its launch, Titanic underwent outfitting with luxury fittings and machinery added to prepare for its maiden voyage. Specifications. The Titanic measured 882 feet and 8 inches in length and had a gross tonnage exceeding 46,000 tons. It featured 16 watertight compartments designed to improve safety. Despite these safety measures, the design limitations would later prove critical during the accident. Luxury and amenities. Titanic was the pinnacle of luxury, offering first-class facilities that included a grand staircase, a swimming pool, Turkish baths, and a gymnasium. The dining experiences were extravagant, featuring connected dining areas that catered to the tastes of the wealthiest passengers with gourmet meals and fine service. The maiden voyage. Departure. Titanic embarked on its maiden voyage from Southampton, England on April 10, 1912, making stops in Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, Ireland, to pick up passengers. Over 2,200 individuals, including passengers and crew, were aboard. Life on board. Accommodations and class structure. First class for the upper classes. Accommodations. First class accommodations were opulent, featuring private suites adorned with fine furniture and luxurious amenities. Many rooms had private bathrooms and large windows, making them appear more like high-end hotels. Dining and amenities. The first-class dining saloon was grand, seating over 300 guests with elegant decor. Meals were gourmet with multiple courses and a wide variety of options. Exclusive amenities included a swimming pool, a Turkish bath, a writing room, and a smoking room where passengers could relax in luxury. Notable passengers. Among the illustrious first-class passengers were John Jacob Astor Fors, one of the wealthiest men in America, Isidor Straus, co-owner of Macy's department store, and Benjamin Guggenheim, a prominent businessman. Second-class accommodations. Second-class accommodations, while comfortable, were simpler compared to first class. Passengers slept in shared cabins with bunk beds, and shared washroom facilities were available. Dining and amenities. Meals offered in the second-class dining area were hearty but less elaborate than in first class. Passengers enjoyed socializing in common areas but without the grandeur of upper-class spaces. Steerage, called third class. Accommodations. Steerage passengers experienced basic dormitory-style cabins with limited privacy. Families often shared these cramped quarters which lacked the amenities of upper-class cabins. Dining and amenities. Meals in steerage were simple, prepared in bulk and served cafeteria style. The food typically included bread, potatoes, and stews. Social spaces were available but offered a stark contrast to the elegance of the upper decks. The tragic events. the iceberg collision. Context and conditions on the night of April 14, 1912. On the night of April 14, 1912, the RMS Titanic was sailing through the icy waters of the North Atlantic. The ship had already traveled approximately 1,400 miles from Southampton, England, and was en route to New York City. The night was unusually calm, with clear skies and a near-flat sea, which resulted in limited visibility of icebergs and other obstacles. Warnings ignored. Throughout the evening, the Titanic had received multiple iceberg warnings from different ships in the area. These warnings were communicated through wireless radios, alerting the Titanic's crew to the presence of ice. Notable among these warnings were messages from the steamship Californian, which had itself become trapped in ice and was forced to halt its journey. The Californian's captain, Stanley Lord, attempted to warn the Titanic about the ice ahead, but the message was either not acknowledged or was disregarded. Despite the impending danger, the Titanic was maintaining its speed of around 22 knots, a decision made by Captain Edward Smith, who aimed to arrive in New York ahead of schedule. The ship was touted as unsinkable, contributing to an overconfidence in the crew's handling of potential risks. The collision. At approximately 11:40 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet and his colleague Reginald Lee spotted an iceberg directly in Titanic's path. According to Fleet's account, he rang the warning bell 3 times to alert the bridge. He was instructed to signal the bridge by using binoculars, but their absence resulted in Fleet viewing the iceberg with his naked eye, which significantly reduced the reaction time for the crew. Ordering the turn and stopping the engines. The ship's first officer, William Murdoch, was quickly alerted. He ordered the engines to reverse and attempted to turn the ship to avoid a direct impact. The officers were trained for emergencies but had little time to react given the size of the iceberg and the ship's speed. Impact. At 11:40 p.m., Titanic struck the iceberg on its starboard side below the waterline. The collision lasted only a few seconds but caused significant damage. Reports suggest that the side of the ship crumpled like an eggshell, with multiple compartments opening to the sea. Immediate aftermath and responses, initial reactions. Following the collision, there was immediate confusion on the bridge. Captain Smith was informed that they had struck an iceberg, and the ship's chief designer, Thomas Andrews, was summoned to assess the damage. Andrews quickly determined that the ship was taking on water at a rate faster than expected and that several forward compartments were compromised. Passengers were initially unaware of the severity of the situation. Many in first class were enjoying an evening of dining and entertainment, while steerage passengers were mostly asleep in their cabins. Assessing the damage. Approximately 5 compartments were breached. The first, second, and third holds along with the forepeak and a part of the fourth hold. The Titanic was designed to stay afloat with up to 4 compartments flooded, which led many to believe that it was safe. However, the water began to overflow into adjacent compartments, creating a domino effect. The evacuation process. Initial reaction to emergency orders. About 10 minutes after the iceberg collision, around 11:50 p.m., Captain Smith ordered the lifeboats to be prepared, although many passengers did not yet grasp the gravity of the situation. Lifeboats were typically used for emergencies, and the prevailing sense of safety led to a lack of urgency among many passengers. When the evacuation began, the initial protocol was unclear. Lifeboats were launched without being filled to capacity, partly due to many women and children refusing to leave the ship, believing it was safe. Passenger and crew losses. Casualties. The total number of people who lost their lives in the Titanic disaster is estimated to be more than 1,500, making it one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history. An estimated 710 survivors were rescued by the RMS Carpathia, which arrived on the scene a couple of hours later. Differences in casualty rates by class. First-class passengers. Of the 325 first-class passengers, approximately 200 survived, resulting in a survival rate of about 61%. The relative safety and access to lifeboats helped many of these passengers escape. Second-class passengers. Out of 285 second-class passengers, around 118 survived, leading to a survival rate of around 41%. Second-class passengers had better access to lifeboats than those in steerage, but bore a higher mortality rate than their first-class counterparts. Steerage passengers. In stark contrast, the survival rate for steerage passengers was only about 25% of the 700-plus passengers in this class. Approximately 150 survived, highlighting the stark inequalities present during the evacuation process. Many steerage passengers were not informed about the severity of the situation and faced language barriers or physical barriers that hindered their escape from the sinking ship. Notable passengers who perished. John Jacob Astor IV, a prominent American business mogul and real estate developer. He was traveling with his pregnant wife, Madeline, who survived. Isidore Straus, co-owner of Macy's department store. He famously refused to leave his wife, Ida, who also chose to stay with him, both ultimately perishing. Benjamin Guggenheim, a wealthy American businessman. He was traveling with his mistress, Madame Aubert. He was last seen wearing evening clothes, stating that he would go down like a gentleman. Both did not survive. Thomas Andrews, the ship's chief designer, he was last seen in the first-class smoking room, urging passengers to evacuate. Notable passengers who survived: Madeline Astor, John Jacob. Astor IV's pregnant wife, she survived the disaster by boarding a lifeboat. Her survival and eventual life after the tragedy became a point of public interest. Molly Brown, known as the unsinkable Molly Brown, she was a prominent American socialite. Brown assisted others during the evacuation and famously encouraged the crew of her lifeboat to go back and rescue more people, although they did not succeed in doing so. She survived the sinking and became a symbol of resiliency. Lawrence Beasley. A noted author and educator, Beasley was traveling in second class. He wrote a book about the disaster titled The Loss of the SS Titanic, which provided a detailed account of the events of the night. Miriam Hart, a steerage passenger, she was traveling with her 3 children, all of whom survived. She was eventually rescued by the Carpathia and reunited with her children, becoming an example of a devoted mother amidst the chaos. Crew lost. Captain Edward Smith. The captain of the Titanic. He went down with the ship, embodying the role of the steadfast leader to the end. William Murdoch, the first officer who was in command during the collision. Murdoch also perished in the disaster. Thomas Braidwood, the ship's chief steward, he was among many crew members who stayed behind to assist passengers. Majority of the crew, of the approximately 900 crew members, around 685 lost their lives, many contributing to the efforts of evacuating passengers or remaining on board until the last moment to help. The last moments. The collision and the subsequent sinking of Titanic are hallmarked by a tragic sense of disbelief and chaos. As the ship continued to take on water, it became evident to both crew and passengers that the Titanic was indeed sinking, leading to panic among those who had not yet boarded the lifeboats. Around 12:15 a.m., as the ship's stern began to rise out of the water, the situation grew desperate. The lights flickered and went out at approximately 2:20 a.m., shortly before the ship broke apart and sank into the icy depths. Rescue and aftermath. Rescue operations. The nearby RMS Carpathia responded quickly to Titanic's distress call, arriving about an hour and a half after the sinking. It rescued approximately 756 survivors, while more than 1,500 perished. Impact and legacy. News of the Titanic's sinking spread rapidly, prompting immediate changes in maritime laws, including requirements for enough lifeboats for all passengers and improved iceberg monitoring systems. The Titanic story has remained pivotal through films, books, and exhibitions that continue to explore the human stories entwined in this tragedy. The discovery of the wreck in 1985 by Robert Ballard reignited public interest, focusing on themes of hubris, safety, and resilience. The Voyage of the Titanic represents an extraordinary tale of human ambition juxtaposed against nature's might. The vessel exemplified early 20th century engineering brilliance, yet its tragic fate serves as a profound reminder of the critical importance of safety and preparedness in maritime travel. The differences between the classes on board highlight the stark social divisions of the time. Experiences varied dramatically between steerage passengers and the upper classes, particularly during the ship's catastrophic sinking. The loss of so many lives, including those of notable figures alongside the survival of others, had a lasting impact on society and continues to resonate with people around the world, capturing both the imagination and the cautionary lessons of a bygone era.